To be able to speak about the Huntstown Community Centre in the Dáil here today, on the day, a couple of days after the budget, and to say that I want to ask the Minister who is standing in for the Minister of Rural and Community Affairs, who couldn't be here today unfortunately, to understand that Huntstown is a very large community in Dublin 15. It has a very successful community centre called the Huntstown Community Centre, which in the year to date has been used by 68,000 people and counting. Now, for the Minister, whom I'm sure is familiar with community centres in his own county of Wicklow, that's a lot of people. And like many public buildings, it has recently undergone an audit, a necessary audit of fire and building checks, particularly in the context of a number of schools in Dublin 15 being found to have serious defect problems. So the Board of Management, the day-to-day management of the centre manager, the manager of the creche, which is run from Huntstown Community Centre, everyone wants the centre to operate to the highest safety levels. The people of Huntstown and Dublin 15 are entitled to no less. The report on fire safety and on structural safety and structural issues with the building is really concerning. And it comes with a price tag, which in the context of the way the government spends money, is not that huge. It's 250,000, and it involves making the roof safe. It involves making the building safe in terms of various materials and various building practices which were not adhered to at a stage when a new addition was added onto the centre some years ago. The centre itself is operating for almost 20 years, and really like the school next door and the church next door to it and the small set of shops on the other side, it is really the heartbeat of the community, and the centre staff and the centre management really work very, very hard and are respected by the community for the contribution they make. So I'm here today, Minister, to ask you and to ask Fine Gael and indeed Fianna Fáil, who are supporting Fine Gael in government, will you ensure that 250,000 is made available to the community in Huntstown so that activities like the creche, vital for families with young children, and it's a community creche, so that activities like after-school events, the coffee shop, where lots of people drop in on a daily basis and on a weekend basis, and all the other activities that take place in the centre, including all the traditional activities in a popular community centre, such as dancing, such as art classes for older people, that these can actually continue. Because I have no doubt, given the seriousness of the reports submitted, the centre will face very serious obstacles continuing as it operates now. And if the government isn't able to address this, and it is able to do it for rural areas like your own, through leader funds, it is able to do it through county councils where they take responsibility for community centres, as they're doing with newer community centres now, or centres in desh areas or in disadvantaged areas. But in Huntstown, people get up early in the morning, like your government talks about them, and they work and they contribute to their community centre. They are no less deserving of government funding and support to ensure that their much-loved community centre is able to continue. And I want to ask you, Minister, can you give hope and reassurance to people in Huntstown that your government is going to make sure that that happens?
Thank you, Deputy. And Thank you, Cahirlock, and just like to thank the Deputy for raising this important matter, and to say at the outset that I just apologise. Indeed, Minister Burton was meant to deputise, but had a domestic matter. So I have, and I will read the note. The Minister is aware of the situation in Huntstown Community Centre and knows how important the centre is to the people there. Centres like this are a cornerstone of many communities around the country. They bring people together in a safe space for social, educational and informational purposes. We need to do all we can to keep them open and in good condition, because they help tie communities together. And as the Deputy has said, I, like herself and all of us here, regularly see this in our roles as members, as public representatives. It is hugely important that the facilities where people gather are fire safe and safe in every other way. And I understand that the issues in that regard have arisen in respect of the community centre in Huntstown, and that the centre is doing everything within its power to address these and work through those requirements. The importance of ensuring that facilities are safe for all to use cannot be understated. Community facilities are funded from a range of different sources across different government departments and agencies. Some of these supports are provided by the Department of Community and Rural Development. For example, the Department has provided funding of $184,000 to Huntstown Community Centre in 2019 under the Community Services Programme. The CSP supports more than 400 community organisations to provide local services through a social enterprise model. Funding is provided towards the cost of a manager and a number of other positions. In total, the CSP has allocated $553,000 to the Huntstown Centre from 2018 to the end of 2020. Separately, the Department funds the Community Enhancement Programme, which helps community groups to improve their facilities. In 2018, Huntstown Community Centre received €3,500 towards building upgrades. The local authorities involved in administering this programme. And my understanding is that Fingal County Council is aware of the fire safety issues with Huntstown Community Centre, which is owned by the local community. The Council is arranging to meet with the centre manager and local councillors to explore what supports can be offered. And I know that this type of issue is not solely confined to the community centre in Huntstown, and that there are funding sources available across government that can be used to cover issues like this. Leader funding can be used for facilities outside the 5 main cities, and both the rural regeneration and urban regeneration funds are also in place. The Community Enhancement Programme is available for minor works if these are needed. So I just urge the community to use their meeting with the Council to explore all options available to them.
Thank you, Minister. Joan Burton.
Just let me say that is a very disappointing response. You've told us about Leader. If this was situated down the country, this community centre would be funded, and funded generously and well, for very important community activities, and the Leader programme is good for that. But part of that, as we know, comes from the EU. If this was in a disadvantaged area, it would probably get funding because the County Council would take responsibility. This is a community-owned community centre. And as I said, it's part of the hub around this very large community. There are sources of funding that this government can use. I've already raised them privately with the Minister, such as the Dormant Funds account. And I have to say, Minister, I'm rather disappointed that in your note from the Minister you didn't reference that, because the Dormant Funds account gives capacity to use the dormant funds precisely for purposes like this. I welcome the County Council actually going and meeting people in the centre. That's valuable. But when you're talking about a community with a huge number of young people, both children and secondary school students, and you're talking about a community which is very diverse. In the school next door, there are about 60 separate languages. And when you talk about a community which is vibrant and integrated, and the staff in the centre who go out of their way, led by the manager, to make everybody feel welcome, and the manager of the creche who goes out of her way to help to look after the young babies and children of the area. We are talking about a vital community resource. We are talking in capital terms about a relatively small sum of money, $250,000 to address the fire safety issues and the roof issues. I mean, last weekend when there were storm warnings, a lot of us were afraid, given the nature of the warning that had been issued about the quality of the roof and the problems with the roof. We were afraid that actually, had the big storm materialised, it would have in fact done much more damage to the roof. So if this work can be done quickly, it can actually be put into place very quickly and money saved. So I'm asking you, Minister, to say to Minister Ring that it's not enough to tell urban communities where people get up early and go to work and pay their taxes that, well, actually, if you were down the country, we'd be able to fund this. But if you're in Dublin, yes, you can use the dormant accounts and you can actually supply the funding to the centre.
Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you, Deputy. Certainly, I'll ensure that your very persuasive arguments are brought back to the attention of the Minister, in particular about the Dormant Accounts Fund and the availability of it. My note says, and I'm aware of this actually, that the Rural Regeneration and Urban Regeneration Funds and the Community Enhancement Programme are possible sources of funding also. But I know that the Minister has asked his officials to keep in touch and keep appraised, following on from the engagement between the local authority, the local councillors and the centre manager, to see what you've obviously more aware of it than I, but that about the best possible measures and how to fund it to make sure that it is safe. I think that's an imperative and everyone accepts that. So thank you.